The kitchen has always been my quiet corner of the world. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the clock, the scent of last night's coffee lingering in the air. But tonight it feels foreign. Cold. Empty. I sit at the small oak table I've had for 30 years, staring at the papers spread before me. The house papers. The ones my son, Jamal, bought with my life savings. My hands tremble as I trace the neat lines of his signature, his handwriting that used to fill my refrigerator door with crayon drawings and Mother's Day notes. Now it's on legal documents. Deeds. Numbers. Promises. I hear his voice from down the hall, spilling through the half-closed door of his old bedroom, the one that still smells faintly of childhood soap and summer afternoons. He's on the phone with his wife, Kesha. His tone is light, cheerful, full of dreams and plans. "Yeah, baby," he says, his laughter echoing softly. "The papers came in today. The house is officially ours." Our. For a moment, the word warms me. Maybe he's talking about me too. Maybe, after all these years, I'll finally live under the same roof as my son again, hear his footsteps in the hall, the grandkids' laughter spilling into my evenings. Then Kesha's voice floats through the receiver, sweet but sharp as a blade. "Finally, Miss Cynthia will have her own room with a view of the garden. She'll love it." I stop breathing. Miss Cynthia. Kesha's mother. There's a pause, just the soft rhythm of rain tapping the kitchen window. Then Jamal chuckles. "Yeah, it'll be perfect for her. And my mom's fine where she is. You know how she is, always fussing about something. It's better this way. More peaceful for everyone. Peaceful. For everyone but me." The sound of their laughter, their plans, their new life, it all seeps through the cracks of the door, wrapping around me like cold wind. My son, my only child, the one I held through fevers and heartbreak, the one I worked double shifts for, is building a home where there's no room for me. I whisper his name under my breath. Jamal, but he can't hear me. On the table, the papers blur as tears fill my eyes. The words on them: property transfer. Buyer, Jamal Jones. Twist and dance like ghosts. I press my palm flat against the page, feeling the chill of the ink, the finality of my own generosity. $20,000. My savings. My sacrifices. The years of skipped vacations, of mended shoes and thrift store coats. I had told myself it was worth it, that every penny was a brick in the home we'd share. But now, it feels like I've built a house where only my absence will live. I lean back in my chair and stare at the ceiling, the hum of the refrigerator growing louder. I can still hear Jamal's laugh. It used to light up my whole heart. Now, it sounds like it belongs to someone else. In the distance, thunder rumbles. The rain thickens against the window, tracing slow lines down the glass, like tears that nature sheds for those who can't cry anymore. I pick up the papers, fold them carefully, and place them in the kitchen drawer. The same one where I keep my bills, old recipes, and now, the proof that love can sometimes be the cruelest form of blindness. When I finally whisper, my voice cracks like thin porcelain. "You bought a house with my money, Jamal, and you bought it to forget me." The words linger in the silence, heavy and bitter. And somewhere deep inside, something begins to change, small, quiet, but certain. The soft crack of a heart learning that even love needs boundaries. 6 months ago, Jamal sat at this very table, the same table now covered with papers and tears. He had that look he always wore when he needed something, a mix of boyish charm and guilt wrapped in a hopeful smile. I used to call it his puppy face. "Ma," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I found the perfect house. 3 bedrooms, a yard for the kids, and even space for a garden. It's everything Kesha and I ever dreamed of." His voice trembled slightly when he added, "I just need a little help with the down payment. 20,000. I'll pay you back in 2 years, I promise. And, of course," he reached across the table and touched my hand, "you'll always have a place with us. You'll always have a place with us." I can still hear those words like a melody that turned into an echo. I remember writing them down that night in my journal, underlined twice in blue ink. It felt like the start of something new, A future where I wouldn't have to eat dinner alone or spend Christmas watching the television glow instead of a fire. I stayed up that night folding laundry that didn't need folding, humming softly to myself. I imagined where my room might be, maybe near the garden. I could bake cookies with the grandkids, tell them the same stories I once told Jamal about his father, before he left. Back then, hope was enough to keep me warm. I see him now in my memory, 28, still with that crooked smile, still my boy. I remember when he was 5 and brought home a drawing from kindergarten, a house with 4 stick figures. One of them was me, holding his hand. "That's our house, Mama," he said proudly. "We'll live together forever." I smiled, so wide I thought my face would crack. Children say forever so easily, not knowing how fragile forever can be. When Jamal left that day with my check, I stood by the door watching him walk to his car. He turned and waved, calling, "Thank you, Mama. You won't regret this." No, I didn't regret it then. Not for a second. Love makes fools of us in the most graceful ways. That night, I made his favorite dinner, baked chicken and mashed potatoes, even though he wasn't there to eat it. The house smelled like comfort and loss at the same time. I sat by the window, looking at the empty street, thinking of how proud I was of him, how I had done something right as a mother. I thought giving him this money was my way of loving him again, of reminding him that I was still here, still useful, still part of his world. But love can be blind, especially a mother's love. Now, as I sit here months later, I realize that what I gave him wasn't just money. It was my trust, my place, my belonging. And he traded it away for peace, peace that didn't include me. I opened my old journal again, the one with the fading blue cover, and run my fingers over that one line written months ago, "You'll always have a place with us." I closed the book gently, whispering into the quiet air. Maybe the mistake wasn't believing him, maybe it was believing I still had a place. Outside, the rain has stopped, but the world still feels soaked in silence. It started as a whisper, a soft thread of conversation slipping through the cracked door, and then it turned into something sharp enough to cut through bone. Kesha's voice drifted through the hallway, sweet and casual, like sugar stirred into poison. "Baby, you know your mom can be hard to live with." The words hung in the air, light as dust, deadly as glass. Hard to live with. I froze where I stood, the wooden floor creaking beneath my slippers. My breath caught halfway in my chest. Hard to live with. I repeated it silently, testing the sound, the cruelty. It didn't fit the woman I'd become, or maybe it did, and no one had dared to tell me before. I pressed a hand to the wall to steady myself. My heart was beating too loud, as if trying to drown out their voices. But it couldn't. Every word reached me, clear, bright, unforgiving. "You know how she is," Kesha went on, her tone lilting familiar. "She means well, but she always has an opinion. It'd be chaos trying to live with her. My mom needs peace. So do we." And Jamal, my Jamal, he didn't defend me. He didn't say, "She's my mother." He just said quietly, "Yeah, you're right. It's better this way." Those 5 words. Better. This. Way. I could feel something inside me collapse, like a bridge that had been standing for decades, finally giving way under the weight of silence. I had spent years learning to live with less money, less energy, less companionship, but I'd never imagined I'd have to learn to live with this, with being unwanted. I turned away from the door before they could say more. My knees felt weak. My hands were trembling, and I wasn't sure if it was anger or heartbreak. Maybe both. The rain outside had grown heavier, each drop tapping against the window like a slow, cruel metronome. I moved to the kitchen window and stood there, staring out. The garden below blurred behind the veil of rain, the garden where I once dreamed of growing roses again when I moved in with them. Now I wondered if there would even be a chair for me, let alone a room. The tears came without sound, just a slow warmth sliding down old, tired cheeks. I didn't bother to wipe them away. What was the point? No one was looking. I thought of all the times I had been there for him, the scraped knees, the late-night fevers, the college bills, the heartbreaks. I had been the safety net, the steady voice, the person who never turned away.
But now,
I was the inconvenience. For the first time, I felt the weight of my years. Not the years themselves, but what they had turned me into in his eyes. A reminder, a burden, a complication in a life he wanted to feel light. My reflection appeared in the dark glass of the window, soft lines etched with time, silver hair pulled back neatly, eyes too gentle for the world she lived in. I looked like a woman who had given everything, and in return, been quietly erased. I whispered to that reflection, voice shaking but clear. Maybe I was hard to live with, because I was the only one who remembered where we came from. A single bolt of lightning split the sky, and the kitchen filled with white light for a moment, sharp, brief, merciless. Then it faded, leaving only shadows and the sound of rain. I stood there for a long time, not moving, not crying anymore. Just breathing through the ache, one heartbeat at a time. And in that stillness, something inside me hardened, not into bitterness, but into resolve. If I had been hard to live with, maybe that was because I had spent too long trying to make life easy for everyone else. Sleep didn't come that night. The rain had stopped, but the house was still full of its echo, the soft drip of water from the gutter, the distant rumble of thunder rolling away like an old argument that refused to die. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind chasing itself in circles. At 5 a.m, I gave up. The sky outside was pale and heavy, the kind of dawn that doesn't promise much. I made coffee the way I always do, 1 spoon of sugar, a drop of milk, and sat down at the table with my old notebook. But this time, I wasn't writing a grocery list. I was writing a reckoning. I opened to a blank page and wrote in small, neat letters at the top. Money I've given to Jamal. And then line by line I began. $2,000 for the used car. $800 to fix the transmission. $10,000 for the kids' school supplies and uniforms. $700 for Kesha's dental work. $3,000 to help with their credit card debt. $500 here. $300 there. And now, the $20,000 for the house. The list grew longer, the ink darker, the air heavier. My handwriting, once steady, began to shake as the numbers climbed. When I reached the end, I sat back and read it all over again. $48,300. $48,300, and not a single repayment. I ran my finger down the list slowly, as if tracing a wound. Each line wasn't just money.
it was a piece of my life.
My hours. My bones. My hope. Every dollar had come from overtime shifts and weekends skipped, from meals I made out of scraps, from dreams I told myself to save for another time. All for love. But love, it seemed, had become a currency no one respected anymore. I looked around my little apartment. The faded curtains, the worn sofa, the chipped edge of the kitchen counter. Everything in this place told the story of a woman who made do, who sacrificed, who waited for gratitude that never came. And for what? For a phone call once a week? For a rushed dinner on holidays? For grandchildren who barely remembered the sound of my laugh? I closed the notebook carefully and set it aside. My hands felt steadier now, my chest clearer. Then, I reached for the box on the top shelf of my closet, the one I hadn't touched in years. Inside were my most important papers: birth certificate, insurance, bank statements, and my will. I unfolded the will slowly. Jamal's name was everywhere. The apartment, the savings, the jewelry that had belonged to my mother, all of it marked to my son. My throat tightened. How foolish it looked now, to hand over everything to someone who saw me as an obligation. My mother's emerald ring was in the bank, tucked in a safety deposit box. She used to wear it every Sunday to church, saying, "A woman should never forget her worth, no matter how small her world gets." Somehow, I had forgotten mine. I folded the will again and placed it on the table. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt awake, the kind of awake that comes after years of silence. The sun had finally broken through the clouds outside, painting the room in a faint, golden light. It touched the pages of my notebook, the record of everything I'd given, and I realized something simple but powerful. I couldn't change what I'd lost, but I could decide what I would give next, and to whom. Tomorrow, I thought, I'll start writing my own chapter. One where love doesn't mean losing myself. The morning after, my phone rang at exactly 9 o'clock. I didn't need to check the caller ID to know who it was. Mama. Jamal's voice filled the room, warm and practiced. We've been working on the house this week. Everything's almost done. But we ran into a few extra expenses. Could you help us out just a little bit more? I stared at the notebook still open on my kitchen table, the list of every dollar I had given him like a mirror of my mistakes. How much do you need? I asked quietly. Not much, he said quickly. Just $3,000. For movers and some furniture. Paint, little things to make it perfect. Perfect. It was such a small word to cover such a deep wound. I took a breath. Let me think about it, I said. There was a pause. He wasn't used to hearing that. Think about it, he repeated, half laughing. You've never had to think before when I needed help. Exactly. I'll call you back in a few days, I said. Then I hung up before he could say another word. The silence after the call was loud, steady, and strangely peaceful. I poured myself another cup of coffee, put on my coat, and picked up my purse. There were things I needed to do, things that couldn't wait another year, another favor, another broken promise. The air outside was cool, the kind of crisp that clears your head. The city was just waking up, dogs tugging on leashes, buses sighing at stops, a world moving forward while I finally decided to join it. When I reached the bank, I greeted the teller, a woman around my age, elegant in her navy suit. Her name tag said Anderson. Good morning, Miss Jones, she said with a smile. How can I help you today? I smiled back, but my voice was firm. I'd like to make some changes to my account. Of course. What would you like to do? I want to remove my son as an authorized beneficiary, and I'd like to cancel the debit card issued in his name. Her pen froze midair. Is there a reason for these changes, ma'am? I met her eyes. For a second, I saw a flicker of understanding, maybe even recognition. Yes, I said softly, because I just realized I've been financing my own exclusion. She didn't ask anything else, just nodded, typing efficiently, her expression quiet and respectful. When the forms were printed, I signed them without hesitation. My hand didn't tremble this time. Each stroke of ink felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Miss Anderson looked up as she filed the papers. Would you like to open a separate savings account? Something private. Yes, I said. Something that's just mine. We went through the details, and when I left, I had a new debit card tucked in my purse, my name on it, mine alone. As I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the sun hit my face. For the first time in years, I noticed how good it felt, how warm, how alive. I walked slowly, breathing in the air like a woman who had just been released from a quiet prison of her own making. The world hadn't changed. The street was the same, the people the same. But I had changed. I wasn't the woman who gave without boundaries anymore. I wasn't waiting for gratitude that would never come. I stopped by the bakery on the corner and bought myself a croissant, something buttery, something I never used to allow. I sat by the window, broke it in half, and smiled at the crumbs on my fingers. Small freedoms, I thought, often taste the sweetest. The day after I left the bank, I woke with a strange feeling, a quiet calm I hadn't known in years. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something steadier, something that felt like control. The sky outside was clear, pale blue. A day for new beginnings if you believed in such things. At noon, I had an appointment with the lawyer the bank recommended, a man named Michael Carter. His office was downtown, tucked between a florist and a small diner that smelled of coffee and baked bread. He was a kind-looking man in his early 60s, his gray suit slightly rumpled, his voice calm and deliberate. Miss Jones, he said, offering his hand. I understand you'd like to make some changes to your will? Yes, I replied, sitting across from him. Some very important ones. He nodded and waited, the way only people who listen for a living know how to wait. I want to revise my inheritance, I said, my voice steady. Part of my savings will go to Jamal, but not all. I'd like to leave a portion to charities, organizations that help older women. The ones who end up forgotten. Mr. Carter's eyes softened. That's a thoughtful choice. It's a necessary one, I said. I don't want to keep rewarding neglect with gifts. I want what's left of my life to mean something. He took notes quietly, his pen scratching softly against the paper. Do you want to place any conditions on your son's inheritance? He asked. Conditions? He nodded. Some clients do. Visits, calls, care obligations. It's not uncommon these days. I smiled sadly. You mean a legal contract to remind a child to love his mother? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I sat back, folded my hands on my lap, and exhaled slowly.
No.
No conditions. Love that has to be written into a contract isn't love at all. He nodded respectfully and began typing. The rhythmic tapping of the keys filled the silence between us, a silence I found strangely comforting. When the paperwork was ready, I signed my name in blue ink. Each letter of my name felt like a reclamation. I wasn't signing away anything. I was signing toward myself. When I walked out of that office, the sunlight hit my face like a quiet blessing. I didn't rush home.
Not this time.
Across the street, the little diner I'd noticed earlier caught my eye. A place I had passed 100 times but never entered because eating alone used to feel like a punishment. I walked in. The bell above the door chimed softly, and a waitress with kind eyes led me to a booth by the window. "What'll it be today, ma'am?" she asked, flipping open her notepad. I scanned the menu, feeling oddly free. "Pan-seared salmon," I said after a moment. "And a glass of white wine." The word surprised me. I hadn't ordered wine in 20 years. Jamal used to scold me about my old-fashioned habits. When the food came, I took my time, each bite slow, deliberate, reverent. The salmon was tender, the vegetables perfectly crisp, the wine cool and clean against my tongue. Outside, people walked by, couples holding hands, children pulling at their parents, the hum of life unbothered by my quiet little revolution. I caught my reflection in the diner window. The same silver hair, the same soft eyes, but something was different. There was a light there, a steadiness. I raised my glass, just a little, and whispered under my breath. To myself, the woman I forgot to celebrate. For the first time in years, the silence around me didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. When I got home from the diner, the air in my apartment felt lighter. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to check my voicemail. I didn't flinch at the sound of the phone ringing. I knew who it was, and I knew I didn't owe them an answer. But by the third day, their persistence became impossible to ignore. 27 missed calls. 15 text messages. Each one said the same thing in different words. "Mama, we need to talk." So when Jamal's last message came that morning, "I'm coming over at 4. We need to fix this." I didn't panic. I brewed tea. I cleaned my kitchen counter. I opened the curtains to let the afternoon light in. And then I sat by the window in my favorite chair and waited. At exactly 4 o'clock, I heard the footsteps in the hall. Then the knock, sharp, impatient, entitled. I took a breath and whispered to myself, "This is my house, my life, my moment." When I opened the door, Jamal stood there, his eyes wide and desperate. Behind him was Kesha, perfectly dressed, perfectly uncomfortable. "Mama," Jamal started, stepping forward to hug me. "Thank God you're okay. We were worried sick." I didn't move. "You were worried?" I asked quietly. "That's new." "Mama, come on," he said, laughing nervously. "Why haven't you been answering? You scared us." I motioned for them to come in. "Sit down," I said simply. My voice was calm, almost too calm. They sat at the table where I had written my list of sacrifices just a few days earlier. It felt like sacred ground now, the altar where I'd finally found my strength. "You talked about me," I began. "About putting me in a smaller apartment. About how I'm hard to live with. About how the house, my house, would be for your real family." Jamal's face went pale. He looked at Kesha, who stared down at her hands. "Mama, that's not." "Don't lie," I interrupted softly. Not today. I heard everything. Every word. For a moment, no one spoke. Only the clock ticked, steady and merciless. Kesha finally broke the silence. Mrs. Jones, we didn't mean any harm. We were just trying to find what works best for everyone. I turned to her slowly. Everyone? That's interesting. Because I don't remember anyone asking what worked best for me. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Jamal leaned forward, his hands clasped like a child begging forgiveness. Mama, please. I know we hurt you, but we can fix this. We want you to live with us after all. We talked about it and I shook my head. No, Jamal. You don't want me to live with you. You want my money to keep flowing. He flinched as if I had struck him. I've been your safety net, I continued. Your insurance policy. Every time life got hard, you called me, and I gave. Not because I had to,
Because I loved you.
but love without respect is just servitude. Tears welled in his eyes. Mama, don't say that.
Please.
I love you. You love the help, I said quietly. You love the comfort I provide.
But you don't love me.
If you did, you wouldn't have talked about me like a burden. You wouldn't have built a future without me in it. Kesha tried to speak, but Jamal raised his hand, silencing her for once. He was crying now, openly, his shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, he whispered. We were wrong. We were selfish. I'll make it right. I promise. I stood up slowly, my hand resting on the back of my chair for balance. No, Jamal, I said gently. You won't. Because some things can't be made right with apologies. He looked at me, confused. What do you mean? I said, the $3,000 you asked for, you'll have to find it somewhere else. I'm done being the bank of Dolores. His mouth fell open. Mama, please don't do this.
I already did, I said.
Yesterday. I changed everything. My accounts, my will, my plans. You'll still get something one day, but not because you expect it. Because I chose it. That's a big difference, son. Silence filled the room like a tide rising slowly, steady and final. Kesha stood up first, her cheeks red with shame. Let's go, Jamal, she whispered. He looked at me one last time, his face a map of pain and disbelief. Mama. I met his gaze, not angry, not bitter, just certain. You'll be all right. You've always landed on your feet. You'll figure it out. He nodded weakly and followed Kesha out. When the door closed, the apartment fell still again. I leaned against it for a moment, my hand pressed to my heart, the tears finally coming, soft, not bitter, like rain after drought. For the first time in my life, I had chosen me, and it didn't feel selfish. It felt sacred. After they left, I stood for a long time with my back against the door. The silence of my apartment felt heavier than ever, yet different. Not hollow, not suffocating. It was full of echoes, of memories, of lessons finally learned. The afternoon sun had begun to fade, spilling its last light across the carpet. I walked to the window and looked outside. The sky glowed with the soft pink of early evening, that tender in-between moment when day gives itself permission to rest. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down in my favorite chair, the one by the window. My hands still trembled slightly, but there was strength in them now, the kind that comes from doing something hard and right at the same time. For so many years, I had believed that love meant sacrifice. That to be a good mother, I had to give until there was nothing left. But now, staring into the cooling tea, I realized that love without respect destroys both the giver and the receiver. Jamal's tears still haunted me, but they no longer controlled me. Maybe one day he'd understand that I didn't stop loving him when I said no. I simply started loving myself, too. The phone lay silent on the counter. For once, I didn't dread its ring. I turned it face down and smiled. There was a time when my world revolved around waiting for calls, waiting for visits, waiting to matter. Not anymore. I decided to call someone instead. My old friend Leonida answered on the second ring. Hey girl, she said, her voice warm as honey. You sound different. What's going on? I laughed softly. Let's just say, I finally had a conversation I should have had years ago. Oh, Lord, she chuckled. Do I need to grab some popcorn?
Not this time, I said.
I think I'm finally free. We made plans to meet at the park, the one with the big oak tree and the benches that looked out over the lake. I hadn't been there in ages. When I arrived, the air smelled like rain and grass. Families were scattered across the lawn, children chasing bubbles, lovers sharing quiet glances. I sat down beneath the tree and felt the earth steady beneath me. Leonida arrived a few minutes later, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed me one and smiled. You look peaceful, she said. I thought about that word, peaceful. It wasn't something I had ever associated with myself before. I'd been many things, dutiful, dependable, generous, tired. But peaceful? Never. I guess peace comes when you stop begging for love that's conditional, I said quietly. She nodded, her eyes kind. It also comes when you realize you've been enough all along. We sat there for a long while, sipping our coffee as the sky shifted from pink to gold, then to the quiet silver of dusk. Somewhere behind us, a street musician started playing the saxophone, slow, soulful notes that drifted like smoke through the air. And for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I'd gained: dignity, clarity, freedom. When I got home that night, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at me was still 69, still had silver strands in her hair and fine lines around her eyes. But there was something new, a calm certainty in her expression. I touched the mirror gently and whispered, "You're not invisible anymore." I turned off the lights, opened the window, and let the cool night air fill the room. The world outside hummed quietly, cars passing, laughter from a distant street, the rhythm of life moving forward. I smiled, because for the first time in a long time, I was part of it again. Not as someone's mother, not as someone's provider, but as me. And if someone out there is listening, maybe sitting alone, maybe holding back tears, I want you to know this. It's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to say no more. And peace, the kind that lasts, begins the moment you stop waiting for someone else to hand it to you. So, if my story touched your heart, share it. Let it remind someone that dignity is not lost with age. It's rediscovered through courage. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this one, stories about women who find their voices after silence, I invite you to subscribe. Because somewhere out there, another woman is learning to say, just like I did, "This is my life. And I'm finally living it." There comes a time in every woman's life when silence becomes too heavy to carry. When the years of giving, forgiving, and waiting finally lead to one small, powerful word: enough. Dolores didn't stop loving her son. She simply remembered to love herself, too. And that simple act of reclaiming her worth was the most beautiful kind of courage. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they are enough. And if you believe that every woman's voice deserves to be heard, that dignity, grace, and self-respect are stories worth telling, then please subscribe to Whispers of Grace. Because here, we honor the women who rise quietly, who find peace after pain, and who remind us all that it's never too late to begin again.